What do you make of all these rumors that have been circulating about Kevin Durant possibly going to the Portland Trailblazers to go alongside Damian Lillard?
This is why I love NBA free agency. These rumors come out of nowhere. Players start posting things, whether that's them going and trying to recruit other players to come play with them. Front offices, Woj and Shams are just consistently reporting all these different rumors, and it's just so much fun. Now, this all started because Dame had posted that picture of him and Kevin Durant photoshopped together in Portland uniforms, and obviously Nurkic then, created one of his own or reposted it or whatever the situation was. And I think it would be interesting to have Kevin and Dame on the same team. Now the issue is what they're going to have to give up to get Kevin Durant, who is arguably a top 3 player in the NBA, depending on who you ask. Some would say top 2 when healthy, of course. But it's just the point is the roster that Portland has. I don't see Brooklyn just simply saying, you know what, we'll take shitty players and some draft picks because we're going to just break this down and kick the tires. And all of this is speculation if Kyrie gets traded because Kevin has said, with everything going on with Kyrie, he's got to keep his options open this offseason too. So we're kind of just playing this by ear as it goes along throughout the postseason. So guys, none of this is for sure. There is no official report that said this was happening. It's just players are starting to post things, so we're kind of trying to read between the lines and obviously just imagine what it would be like. I don't necessarily know if they would win. You're now joining a stacked Western Conference. Dame has been injured the last couple of seasons. Kevin Durant's got a lot of miles on him as well, but still showed he can average 30. Now, outside of those two players, it's just going to be like Brooklyn all over again. Can they defend? Can they score when those two are off the floor? Do they have depth? Will Kevin Durant be willing to play with Chauncey Billups as his head coach? I don't know. I mean, and the only potential players that I see on this roster are Anthony Simmons, Josh Hart, and Nurkic. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there is no talent with Joe Ingles, and we know what he can provide. Obviously, we know that Nasir Little had a couple of 30 balls, and so on and so forth. They have, I didn't even realize they had Eric Bledsoe too. So they have some people on this, some veterans, and they also have, of course, I'm looking at Justice Winslow, who is a complete bust as far as I'm concerned, being drafted a top 10 or top whatever he was to Miami. But anyway, they have spotty players. They have potential players, but again, the only good players I would see that would have to get packaged for KD would have to be Simmons, would have to be Hart, would have to be Nurkic, and then picks because Kevin Durant, like Kyle said about LeBron James, being traded is an earth-shattering report, an earth-shattering possibility. So if you empty the roster just to bring in KD and play with Dame, you're doing the same thing that he's got in Brooklyn right now, and that's just I don't know if that's going to work out, especially because as we alluded to just a few moments ago, the Clippers are reloaded. Denver's going to be reloaded. Dallas is coming back stronger. Obviously, we got Phoenix, who is the number 1 seeded team in the Western Conference. The Warriors are the defending champs, and the list just goes on. The Western Conference is just a tight knit, just a very very competitive uh, conference right now. And to just subtract 3 or 4 players in picks to throw somebody on a team that's already struggled as is just doesn't really make sense to me. Would it be cool to see Dame and KD pair up? I mean, yeah, they'd probably squeak at the 8th seed, maybe the 7th seed, just because of the two of them together. But if one of them goes down, or if they're not getting along, or if they can't score and those two are off the floor, or if their defense is bad like Brooklyn's, I don't necessarily know how this is going to handle itself as the season progresses. One of the cool rumors, yeah. Interesting, yeah. Possible, I don't think so.
It really depends on where Brooklyn is from a front office because if they're of the mindset that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are just not happy with the general direction that the team is headed in, there could be a real possibility that Brooklyn could look at this situation where it's like, you know what? We may have to blow this thing up. And if that were the case, I'm speaking just on that hypothetical, I think Portland could actually make somewhat of a compelling trade package for Kevin just because I think that Brooklyn would just try to, clear the books of KD and Kyrie at that point, and then just bring in some role players with the roster that they have assembled right now in a potential trade package that Portland would send to them, and give Kevin Durant another crack at another team to possibly win a title with. Do I put a lot of faith into that? Not necessarily. I can't rule it out just because of the possibility existing, but it's like a 5% chance. Now, still, like for me personally, I still think it's an interesting story to go over because when I look at just the possible matchup of Kevin Durant and Damian Lillard being on the same team together, I think that would be the jolt that Portland needs. Portland has always been one of those, I would say, like they're on the cusp of being a really good team in the Western Conference. It's just they just can't find ways to get into a situation where they're playing in a Western Conference Finals, where they're playing in an NBA Finals, where they're potentially playing for an NBA championship. And to Dame's credit, he's going to play this thing out in Portland. He could have left. He could have found a more rosy situation in a different town or a different city, but he's remained loyal to Portland, and I definitely have to respect that with him. And I do think that, him putting the picture of him and KD next to each other, with Kevin Durant being in a Trailblazers jersey, I think that's just him going out and trying to make a recruiting pitch effort to possibly, get Kevin to possibly think of the idea of, going out to the West Coast, playing in Portland, and trying to get it done out there. I think that would definitely be cool. And I think that if Brooklyn was in a situation where they actually wanted to trade Kevin, just because I think that Kevin in that instance would probably force Brooklyn's hand to where he'd want to get out of there. I could see Portland trying to make a trade package with, like Kevin said, maybe Eric Bledsoe, Nurkic, Josh Hart, maybe Nazir Little and Afrani. I mean, Portland would really have to kind of dump their roster to go after Kevin. And granted, I mean, after that, I mean, you'd have guys like McLemore that could potentially be like inserted into a starting role at that point, just because, I mean, Portland would have to give up an arm and a leg essentially, try to get Kevin Durant into the mix. And I just don't necessarily see that. I think the idea of Kevin joining Portland would be a very interesting one, just because I think it would give Portland that push to be a really competitive team in the Western Conference. I just don't really see this thing playing out, but still, like Kevin said, it's a very interesting rumor, and I do think that Dame is going to try to make an effort to possibly make that a reality. I just don't think it would work out in the end. I think it would present more problems for Portland than it would positives, and that's just how I see it.